Today on the LWT Disciple Maker broadcast, pastor of City of Refuge Church in Los Angeles, California, with over 17,000 active members, and international evangelist, Bishop Noel Jones.
The original pattern or model of a work. Now, what God has done in your life that makes you unique, and the reason you ought to stop trying to be everybody else, is that what God has done is He has created a need for your gift.
Disciple Makers broadcast. I am Prophetess Marilyn Fisher, and with me this evening, I have a dynamic, charismatic man of God. He needs no introduction. He draws crowds wherever he goes with a powerful, powerful message. I also want to introduce to you this evening a very special friend of a bishop who's with us on the set this evening, and he holds the ground on his own as well. This evening, I want to welcome to you the one and only Bishop Noel Jones, and with him, a very special friend, Apostle Tolliver. I want to welcome you both gentlemen to the set this evening. And how are you doing?
Doing well.
That's wonderful. I just heard you just preach a dynamic message, elevating your mind. Where was that message birthed?
Well, you have to understand that the greatest work of the preacher and pastor particularly is Romans chapter 12. That particular aspect that says, be not conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And theology has to take on psychology, because if you're going to deal with the mind, you have to have a psychological approach. Too often we preach from a philosophical point of view.
So very true.
But we don't preach from a psychological point of view. And Israel was delivered, but they were not healed. And only 2 entered into the promised land. Everyone else of the original number died in the wilderness. Because even though they were delivered, they were not healed. And in many instances, we are delivered, but we are not healed. And it is the job of the pastor in teaching and preaching to bring people who are delivered to a place of transformation, to that place of healing.
Amen.
So that's where it was birthed, actually.
Amen. And I know I didn't give you a chance to introduce yourself, because I really want to hear it from a friend. I want to hear it from someone who knows you a little bit. Tell me a little bit about this man of God.
Well, Bishop Noel Jones is a great man of God. I've known him for years, at the school with his kids. It's a great blessing. Coming up in Longview, Texas, we used to play basketball at YMCA. And we used to play basketball at YMCA, and it was a great blessing that I didn't even know at that time that Bishop was a preacher.
Remember I had a court at the house, too?
Yeah, the court at the house. We used to go to the house and play, and I used to beat Bishop at the court at the house.
You beat me. You can beat me now, but then I would dunk on you.
He's a real athlete, isn't he?
Yeah, but athlete, you ever heard the name Donald Corey, Olympic star? Well, he and I would compete in high school, and if you go back as far as 1966, I beat him in long jump. I jumped 21 feet, 7 inches. My son owns the high jump record at Claremont College for the last 14 years. He's been over 7 foot. He owns the hop, step, and jump record. My grandson is the 36th gymnast in his class in all of America. And
It's
he's
in the
only
genes,
12 years.
isn't it?
My mother was high jump champion.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's nature and nurture.
You heard it first here.
Yeah.
My
Really,
God.
that's the truth.
My
That's the
God.
truth.
How do you stay relevant the way you
Well, one of the things about staying relevant, and I think it's very important, is that on Saturdays I mentor young pastors, and they come when I'm studying, and we talk about what they're going to preach in the morning. And it is interesting that while I'm mentoring them, and even when we sit around talking, that oftentimes I am just completely flabbergasted by the approach that young men have towards scriptures because of the contemporary environment that they're in connection with. So me being in connection with them keeps me in connection with the environment that they're familiar with. Because as we get older, not only older, as we get in the eyes of people more accomplished, then we become more iconoclastic in their eyes. Not that, because one of my chief statements is that what I live my life by is never act as if what you have received is something that you have achieved. And that's because the greatest theologian of all times, indisputably, is Paul. And he said, I am that I am by the grace of God. Today, the iconoclastic Hollywood type of pastor, and which I fall in the category too, is that people give you an iconoclastic sort of a proclivity they have towards that. And at the end of the day, we're just like everybody else. But what happens is they isolate you. But actually they're calling themselves insulated. You can't get to the pastor, he's busy, he's tired, you can't touch him, he leaves before church is over, so he's insulated. But if you insulate him, you isolate him. And if you isolate him, then he no longer knows what people need. So he just tell them what he knows.
My God.
And to tell you what I know might not be what you need.
So that's why you stay connected.
Have to stay connected. The neurotic, the artists, and the preachers have to feel the change of the time. I mean, when Tina Turner sang, "What Did Love Have to Do with It?" It wasn't because she was so melodious or because she was a pulchritude splendor. It was because she was in touch with the love of the times, the free, the sex, and then so her song was, "What Does Love Have to Do with It?" became number one around the world because she was in touch. The neurotic, he flees when changes are made because he's living on the edge. And the preacher, if he is not in touch with what goes on in his world, he's obsolete. He's of no significance.
Wow. That is so...
Relevance. And I tell you another thing too, that we could argue, and that is sometimes we're so caught up with our identity, we cease to be relevant. Jesus was so relevant, they didn't even know he was God.
My God.
Didn't even know he was God.
It seems to me you're a lyricist. Your words are like poetry.
Well, I studied English literature, and I studied under the British, Hilary Belloc, Lord Tennyson.
My God.
I did even a little American poetry, Longfellow. And his heart was hot within him like a living coal. His heart was.
My God.
Elizabeth
Do you know
Browning.
Do you know a little bit of Shakespeare?
Shakespeare, As You Like It.
My goodness.
I did that, Macbeth.
The entire genre.
I had to do it.
Absolutely.
Didn't like it. Had to study Latin.
Did you say you didn't like it? You
just
sound like you enjoyed
boys.
it.
I read poetry to my kids. Hilary Belloc. Matilda told such dreadful lies, it made one gasp and stretch one's eyes. Her aunt, who in her earliest youth had kept a strict regard for truth, attempting to believe Matilda, the effort almost nearly killed her. So, I had to do
Do people know that side of you?
And,
they don't.
not too many.
I'm enjoying this because I think you're in a state of glee right now and bliss, having come from that glory cloud.
Well, one of the things that people don't realize from a psychological viewpoint. And many times, pastors and preachers get judged negatively because of some of the things they do when they get by themselves. People don't really understand the drop-off that comes from being in front of 10,000, 15,000, 20,000, 30,000, up to 80. I preached up to 300,000
My
people.
God.
And then to go into a hotel room alone. It's quite a drop-off.
What does that do to you when you're, like you were saying earlier, when you feel insulated?
Well, in this case, it's not an
The
insulation particularly. It's a withdrawal. It's like
Wow.
you know, I have a dog called JJ. JJ is a Shih Tzu, a Yorkie Shih Tzu mix, and I have withdrawals. I mean, and when I left, and then now I have Bella, and Bella is a miniature Yorkie, and I had withdrawals. I mean, leaving them yesterday, and JJ will not eat until I come home.
Wow.
And so, in the same sense, when you're out here and the Lord is moving, the anointing is great, people are being blessed, and you're open, and then all of a sudden, you drop into this tunnel called a hotel room.
Wow.
That's why the preacher's on the phone as soon as he gets out the door, because he feels a disconnect immediately. So he's trying to connect, and he can end up doing some negative things. He can end up drinking. He can end up doing some negative things. People don't understand the
Dynamics of
dynamics
it
of it. Yeah,
all. My goodness.
it can be quite debilitating.
That's interesting.
And don't ever get to love it. That's why what I do on Sunday nights after church and Wednesday nights is I go home and the guys, we play chess. We get to mind on something else.
Oh, I beat him in pool.
Yeah, then you beat me up in pool one night.
Only one night.
Yeah, one night. I'm waiting
Let
on
that
him.
be on the record.
I'm waiting on him, though. I'm waiting on him. He's coming to LA.
That's right.
So I came to Dallas once. He said, let's go play pool. I said, no. You beat me on my home ground. I'm sure not playing on yours.
Home court advantage.
Yeah, definitely.
Now, if you were not preaching, would there be another profession that you would be involved
I like
in?
speed. I like speed.
So are we talking race car?
I actually was getting ready to go to aviation school. I want to be a pilot.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's what I'd probably do right now. Fly up and down. I'd be retired now. Yes. Yeah, but that's what I wanted to do. And then when I told my dad that I felt an inkling to preach, he said, well, stop everything and go straight to seminary. So I left and I went to seminary.
That was good advice.
Yeah. He said, I don't want you to be a jackleg preacher. If you're going to preach, he said, I want you to preach.
I want you to know what you're talking
Yeah,
about.
and then he was something else. I would make a presentation, and then he'd say to me, he said, Noel, that was such a marvelous book report. He was like that.
Now you have other famous people in your company, in your family as well.
Yeah. They're famous. My sister is Grace Jones. Yeah, and so Grace is in a world by herself. She did a show in New York, and she just went out. Actually, she was almost totally naked. She just painted.
So what do you think about that?
That's Grace.
That's Grace. You like Grace be Grace.
I said my father put it best. He was in Jamaica years ago, and I had an uncle who was just, it's like Heil Hitler, the Fuhrer himself. I mean, this uncle was like, I mean, you under heavy manners. Everything was a sin. And Grace was doing a show, I think she was doing View to a Kill, the movie, the James Bond movie. Mm-hmm. And it came in the papers in Jamaica, and Grace was in some kind of bodysuit. And my uncle didn't want my father to preach because of Grace's bodysuit. And And then he asked me to preach. And I said, no. I said, there's no way that you're going to tell my father not to speak, and then I step in and say, no. I said, no, that's my dad. I couldn't do that. And my father said, I can't take credit for what Noel does, so why should I take credit or blame for what Grace does?
So true.
And I embrace Grace. I mean, she's my sister.
And like you said, that's grace.
That's grace.
And mercy.
And I tell you another thing too. When they consecrated me bishop, I had a celebration at the Ritz-Carlton in Phoenix, and Grace was there, and Grace got up, and of course she had a cup underneath the table, whatever was in it. But when she got up and sang "Amazing Grace," and then she berided all the bishops for not having a woman bishop.
Oh my God. She's probably the only one who can get away with that.
Well, pretty much. Pretty much.
Now you have many talents. What are some of the future things that you're looking at?
Well, right now I'm
writing.
I'm writing 3 books. Right now, and I'm writing.
And all at the same time?
Yeah, and as my mind moves from one conceptualization to another, then I feel that in. Then my daughter is helping. In fact, she's coming to put some pieces together, Tiffany. And it's just an interesting dynamic because I'm really looking, one, at the violence that we're having in our country. I'm looking at things and how the love of money and things actually how it has even corrupted the gospel, even our presentation in church. One friend of mine, the illustrious preacher, the Reverend Maurice Watson, I was with him the other night, and he had a sermon. One of his messages from Corinthians was the cross in eclipse, that no one is preaching the cross.
Yes.
Wow.
We're preaching a relationship with God that's material,
Yes.
Wow.
not spiritual. And we're actually preaching Americanism and capitalism for gospel.
Yes.
If you cannot preach it in Somalia, if you can't preach it in
Then it's American.
Darfur, if you can't preach it in
My God.
Madagascar, then it's American.
Absolutely.
And because America telecasts to the world, my African Nigerian brothers are saying to me, because I was one yesterday, we're trying to get Mayweather to go to Africa to fight. And
Oh wow!
we were with him
That
yesterday.
you must elaborate a little bit on that.
Yeah, well, I'm the bridge, and I've had Mayweather to speak over in Africa.
Is there a specific region that you're looking to?
Well, South
Infiltrate.
Africa probably,
South
but the
Africa.
Nigerians are backing it financially, and yes, the
That is
Nigerians.
awesome.
And really, I'd like to get boxing in Jamaica because they like to fight. They like to fight. You know, put them in a ring. We need some boxing gyms in the inner city America.
Amen.
And you want to fight? Come on, at least put some gloves on. Get away from these weapons.
Stop shooting and
Yeah,
killing.
but
do
it's
something
all about
positive.
things.
Yes.
You see, capitalism makes enemies. We have the biggest military in the world. We imprison 25% of the prisoners in the world are imprisoned in America because it's profitable. It's money. The war on drugs was the war on blacks and browns, because if you were white and you had cocaine, you get smacked on the hand. But for crack, you go away for 25 years.
My God. My
See,
God.
and so they spend trillions of dollars on the war on drugs, and it just turns out to put a whole lot of people in prison. So we've got legislation in California that says if it's a nonviolent crime, out the door you go. We take you out of prison because you
That's great
had some
legislation.
drugs on you.
Yes.
He wasn't shooting anybody.
That's right.
I mean, people spend less time for murder.
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah, my brother.
Your brother
locked
brother's
up
situation.
24 years in prison. I mean, he ain't murdered nobody. Just because, they said he looked at a young girl.
Wow.
In 24 years. He ain't murdered nobody. He didn't rape nobody.
And even if he gets better, he still has
Even though
not
too long ago, I was
rehabilitated.
saying that he got stabbed real bad.
Yes, he got stabbed.
In prison.
In prison, and he was supposed to be in protected custody where they don't supposed to be letting
With
nobody
other-
get to him. And the
My
amazing
God.
part about it is that the family can't even see him.
Jesus.
So you can't, you
He
don't know
paralyzed
what
on
his,
there. We don't even know the condition.
See what
His
happened was the
condition.
knife came down the
Yeah,
neck,
yeah.
cut this artery here
Yes.
that feeds blood to the brain,
Yes.
and that's like having a stroke.
Yeah. That's the
My
brain.
God.
Yes.
Paralyzed.
no
one side.
accountability.
Yeah, and it's awful, but it's profitable. And then one of the things that's so sad is that judges have shares in prisons.
What do you mean by that?
Shares. They own shares.
In the prison.
Yes, they own
Stocks
shares.
and
Stocks
shares.
and shares
In
prisons.
prisons.
Judges.
Yes.
You would think that is a contradiction.
That's a
or
total
to,
conflict of
interest.
interest.
Absolutely.
In California now, California sends its overcrowded group to Mississippi and Alabama,
Yes.
and they said we'll take them if you'll keep us full.
Yes.
My God.
So,
Now
and
there's
then another thing, I'd like to say this based on that message tonight,
Yes.
is that many people are going to prison who have mental problems.
Mental problem. Yeah.
and that is
A lot
not
of these
justice.
kids are
That's
having
not
mental
justice.
problems,
Yes.
but they don't need to go to prison.
That's right.
They need to go to
Mental health
a
facility.
mental health facility. They're calling the police in schools
Yes.
on our kids,
Yes.
My God.
and so immediately they're being targeted from junior high school as a problem.
Yes.
You see, and it's mental.
And they're waiting for them with open arms in
Oh,
the
yeah,
in
they're
the
gonna-
juvenile system.
And once they
with
get
the
in that
children.
system, it's out of control.
Man of God, I could tell you're very passionate about that topic, and we really appreciate your heart and your love for the youth. But before we leave, we know that you're an entrepreneur and you've been in many ventures, and I'm not going to let you leave here without us talking about, exactly where I'm going with the reality TV show.
Well, the show, I think the Preachers of LA, as opposed to all the others, is way more dignified and and the viewership shows it. I mean, no show comes out with over 1 million viewers without having something prompted
Yeah.
before, and none of the others. All the others are canceled.
Yes.
And I think the thing with Loretta and I is an exciting kind of a thing because it's edgy, and with Ron being angry, and Ron and all of that's edgy. But at the same time, I only did the show because I wanted to reduce the iconoclastic proclivities that people have towards leaders. That's all.
You
And I
wanted
think
to
I
be
did it.
normal in the sight of the people.
Well, it goes like this, and I'll sum it up like this. To whom little is given, little is required.
Yes.
To whom much is given, much is required. And I hear that all the time. My answer to that, though, is to whom much is given, all is not required.
That's right.
Wow.
To whom all is given, all is required.
Wow.
And that's only God.
Amen.
Because all we have is much.
Yes.
But much is required, but not all. Which means we're flawed. God never used a man except Jesus Christ, who was not flawed in
Amen.
one way or other.
Amen.
And now you can decide what flaws you can forgive or what flaws you can live with, what flaws you can't. But God, one of my books is going to be Transparency or Hypocrisy.
What are the other two titles?
I don't have the title yet for the other,
Or
but I
topics.
know what it's going to what it's
The
going to deal with.
topics.
The topic is going to deal with
What we
the
talk.
image of God, really. The image of God versus things.
Wow. Wow.
Because the love for things has caused us to mistreat our brothers. How many locks you have on your door? Why? Why you have your door locked up? Because somebody will kill you for $25. Somebody will break in your house and kill you over something you work for. So you lock them out. Things have destroyed our relationship. God gave us dominion, but he never said love it. Love not the world.
I could sit here and listen to this all day. Your philosophy
I talk
is
too much.
no, it's very deep and enlightening, and what you have to say is profound. I want to thank both of you gentlemen for coming on to this evening. I want to thank you, Apostle Tolliver, for being here today, and Bishop Noel Jones. It's been such a pleasure.
It's my pleasure.
God bless you.
This is Bishop Noel Jones, and this is Living Witness TV.